There are many factors that contribute to the hyperpolarization in our country. A large reason is our own nature. Some of us are hardwired to be bleeding heart liberals, and others are more hardwired to be tough love conservatives. And there's a time and place for each of these approaches that are rooted in maternal and paternal instincts, which is why both are necessary. But what we don't need are bad faith actors who exploit our goodwill, especially bad faith activists and political operatives who expertly manipulate our goodwill and nature for their own selfish gain. And these bad faith actors come from the left as well as the right. And more people need to be aware that bad faith actors are not just from the opposing political team. Oftentimes, bad faith actors and activists come from one's own side of the political aisle, because those are the people who trust them the most and make the manipulation that much easier. The problem begins with the simple fact that many people feel the need to pick a side, that they can only identify as either a liberal or a conservative, but not both, or a Democrat or Republican, but definitely not both, because technically you cannot be registered as both at the same time. Worse yet, the problem really surfaces when people really feel the need to go deep, when they feel the need to either be a full-on religious right-winger or a committed leftist, which is proven to function as a religion too. And that's when people's goodwill gets exploited the most by the bad faith actors that they think are on their side. And those people will make you feel like you can never be left enough or right-wing enough. You can never be too woke, or you can never love and serve your God of choice obediently enough. You'll always be a sinner, or you'll always be a flawed comrade in need of re-education, especially when it comes to your privilege. And bad faith actors do this by twisting kernels of truth about issues that affect society and people at large, then dangerously blow them out of proportion for their own selfish gain. For example, from the left side of the political spectrum, Black Lives Matter did this by using racism and misrepresenting the fact that some unarmed Black Americans get killed by police every year, unfortunately. But then again, so do unarmed white Americans at almost double the amount. Not to mention how many police officers are also killed on the job every year by Black Americans, no less. And that's how bad faith activists basically lie by omitting facts most people are not aware of. And BLM did this mostly on presidential and midterm election years by exploiting the deaths of Trayvon Martin in 2012, which was Obama's re-election year, Michael Brown in 2014, which is a midterm election year during Obama's second term, Philando Castile in the presidential election year of 2016 between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and of course, George Floyd in 2020, which was the re-election of Donald Trump. But just like leftist extremists have taken advantage of people's goodwill and cowardice, to be honest, religious conservative groups and media outlets do exactly the same, especially over issues like abortion and child sex trafficking. Though it must be pointed out, at least right-wing groups do not engage in hundreds of needless riots and the destruction of communities in a single year like 2020. And much less do right-wing groups get to do this nowadays with the encouragement of many career politicians. However, January 6th, the following year, almost made up for all those riots in a single day, considering the call to action was declared by former President Donald Trump over lies about a stolen election that was his own fault for losing. This is how right-wing religious conservatives also widen the political divide in the United States and throughout other countries by pushing conspiracy theories such as Trump's stolen election, which I almost fell for too. However, other conspiracy theories sounded insane from the moment I heard them. For example, QAnon and the cabal of global elites blood harvesting organs from children to drink adrenochrome to stay young. And actor James Caviezel, who played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ, continues to push that ludicrous conspiracy that has long been debunked as he promotes the movie Sound of Freedom, which he plays the lead role.
I think it goes all the way to Planned Parenthood, the jugs of plastic containers they use the children. I think those go to the biolabs. I should say that I know they do that. They send them to places like that all over the world. These biolabs, I think this is part of the whole business.
What do they do with them in the biolabs when they receive them?
Well, either making the adrenochrome, or they're using it to, from what I was told, is that, and also for making agents to, kill people with it.
Since 2023 is not a presidential election year or even a major midterm election year, when it comes to emotional extortion and exploitation, groups like Black Lives Matter have been staying out of the media's attention, especially now that they've been exposed for squandering the $90 million they received in donations in 2020 alone. Yet when it comes to 8- and 9-digit fundraising through charitable donations or the illusion of them, this summer's runaway blockbuster hit, Sound of Freedom, has managed to earn well over $100 million so far in the first month of its release. Now that money is well earned, if it truly is based on a true story. And hopefully some of that $100 million will be well spent on the cause it claims to want to help end, child sex trafficking. The movie is based on Tim Ballard, who started Operation Underground Railroad to save children from pedophile trafficking rings around the world. But you might have your doubts, like I'm having, after doing some basic research on the movie, not to mention on Operation Underground Railroad itself, let alone listening to James Caviezel espouse conspiracy theories as he promotes the movie where he plays the role of Tim Ballard. And just like it took many people to see through the shameless grift that Black Lives Matter was pulling on the country and the world at large, it may still take a lot more people to still be convinced, since Black Lives Matter is claiming to fight the good fight against white supremacy and racism in general. And who in their right minds wouldn't want to stand behind that? And who honestly doesn't believe that Black Lives Matter? Of course they do. It should go without saying. Yet that's precisely how empathy and goodwill are exploited by bad faith actors. It's not by accident that so much guilt is used, particularly to test the limits of people's commitment and even their cowardice to question what they might sense is a little off. And it seems like the same goes with fighting against child sex trafficking. Any decent human being is going to obviously stand behind that cause. And absolutely no one in their right mind wants to be associated with even remotely promoting pedophilia. Of course, most people want to do something to help. And people who are in the business of running charities for such causes know this. And here's an example of how it's done.
For someone that is hearing this and they didn't know the weight of just the sex trafficking world and how big it was and how big it is and where it could be going if we don't do anything to stop it, and it feels daunting to them, what can they do to get involved in some way in supporting ending sex trafficking? What's the first step? How can they learn more? Where can they go on your site to get more information about what governments are doing?
So it's a super dark world, which is why so many just want to turn a blind eye. But you've been a supporter and you've donated so much money you brought.
But before you blindly donate to this particular charity, do your research. And here's where things get messy, depending on which side of the political aisle you think you stand for, but might have been subtly indoctrinated into thinking you stand for it. If you consider yourself a liberal, and especially an anti-racist progressive lefty who claims you could never be woke enough, yet you think using the word woke itself is a sign of white supremacy, if you're that personality type, when you do your research about the movie Sound of Freedom, you will easily believe the undercover stories that Vice News has been reporting on Operation Underground Railroad. You will also agree 100% with the condescending movie review in Rolling Stone magazine. But if you consider yourself a conservative and a pro-life right-winger and a born-again evangelical Christian to top it off, you might view Vice News as a ragtag publication that recently filed for bankruptcy, which you'll probably agree serves them right to go broke after going woke. And if you're in this camp, chances are you only read the worst lines from the infamous Rolling Stone article about Sound of Freedom, thanks to conservative pundits who probably didn't even read the entire article, which is actually well worth the read. Because in that article, there's a lot to learn. Towards the end, you will discover the author's own leftist bias, where he is pushing leftist tropes in an almost apocalyptic tone, which he's probably become immune to hear himself say. Or maybe he does know he's exaggerating those issues, but he knows that if he wants to boast about writing for Rolling Stone, There's certain buzzwords and phrases he has to repeat like a trained parrot. This is how the hyperpolarization sausage gets made. It's been reported for years that social media has been siloing Americans into either left or right political camps, particularly after Trump's election in 2016. But rarely will any of those media companies reporting that admit to doing it themselves, let alone how they do it, and much less if they'll ever change. That's why it's so important for anyone interested in knowing the truth, especially if you don't want to have your empathy exploited, or if you don't want to have your vote wasted because you want to see problems get solved. You need to read and hear from as many news sources as possible, even the ones you hate from the other side of the political aisle, because that's how you get to see the truth. It usually is somewhere in the middle. And it's just as important to realize what personality type you are. That is, if you lean more liberal or if you lean more conservative. That way you can be careful how your nature might be exploited, especially by extremist groups who make people believe they can't be both liberal and conservative depending on an issue. That you must be a Democrat or a Republican. You must be on the left or the right, but never both. The moment you sense or feel that, chances are your goodwill is being exploited by bad faith actors, particularly those who don't care about whichever issue they claim to care about, such as racism or child sex trafficking, as much as they care about gaining money and power by exploiting people's goodwill, especially people who care enough about solving issues but are being blinded to the fact that sometimes it takes a combination of liberal and conservative approaches to solve them. If I got anything wrong in this video, please let me know in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for upcoming videos, and check out the links below for my original art and merchandise. And thanks for watching.